TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Leaders sometimes doubt themselves, and when they doubt themselves, they've forgotten what about them is really important and unique. We need to be able to self-promote. That does not mean bravado. It's a knowing and a confidence in what you do.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is another beautiful day here in North Carolina, and this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, the Fraternity of Excellence, the Sasquatch Flag Company, and Jeremy Clevenger Fitness. These sponsors help me bring these shows to you each and every week, so I encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. I have another great show lined up for you today, but before we get started, I just want to remind you to check out the leadership books I've written on either Amazon or my website, johnsrennie.com. This year, I'm offering a new way to purchase all of my books for a discount. I've bundled the books into what I call the Qualified Leadership Series, and you get all 3 books for 15% off the individual prices. This offer is only available on my website, so check it out if you're looking to step up your leadership game this year. Also, I want to remind you that Deep Leadership is ranked as a top 100 management podcast in the U.S. and in the U.K., and I wanted to thank each and every one of you for listening in each week and sharing these episodes with your friends. You have helped this podcast grow into a top-performing show, so thank you very much. Well, that is it. Today we're going to be talking about what it takes to advance your career. My guest is Mary Lee Gannon. Mary Lee went from welfare to CEO of a $33 million organization. She shares what she learned from that transformation that will help you advance as well. If you feel like you're stuck running on a treadmill and not making any progress in your career, you need to listen to this powerful conversation. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20-plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world, actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Mary Lee Gannon. Mary Lee is an executive coach on a mission. She went from being on welfare, homeless, and without a car to quickly becoming a CEO of a $33 million organization. In that process, she learned that working harder is not the only necessary strategy to advance in your career. She now helps leaders get off the treadmill to nowhere, to become respected, advance in their careers, and prioritize well-being in her five-star leadership formula. I'm excited to have her on the show to learn how we can all get off that treadmill to nowhere. So Mary Lee, welcome to the show.
I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an honor. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm excited to hear your story and to learn from your experiences. But I first wanted to get started with that introduction. So tell us your story. How did you go from being on welfare to being a CEO of a $33 million organization? That is not normal. So I thought I would give you a chance to talk a little bit about how you go about doing that.
Sure. I was a stay-at-home mom of 4 children under 7 years old, living what would look like on the outside to be the country club life. And on the inside, it was an unpalatable situation. So I filed for divorce as a leap of faith, and I was not at all prepared for the avalanche that befell me. I had co-signed loans for my ex-husband's businesses, and when I filed for divorce, he defaulted on all those loans, which then took all of our marital property, our home, the cars, everything went down into bankruptcy, and then he just opened up another business, bought the assets in a straw company out of the bankruptcy, and operated the same business in the next week under a different name. Meanwhile, the children and I are homeless, on welfare, food stamps, medical assistance, without an automobile, and it was scary. And I knew I didn't have time to go back to school. And for a while, I thought chasing him through the courts was going to give a self-employed man without a conscience some accountability, but wasn't the case, I found. So I quickly, but after a lot of despair and woe is me and all of the martyrdom, and I was a good wife, I'm a good person, how did this happen to me? Finally, I said, I'm not wasting any more time. I had lost all money that I had on lawyers, and the only time I won is when I defended myself in court because he had appealed a child support and alimony award of $269 a week for the five of us. So I really had to assess my signature strengths. And I work very hard with my clients on this, because if you don't know what you're good at and only you can do, excuse me, then you can't differentiate yourself, because everybody is working hard at a certain level. And especially in the C-suite, everybody's working hard. So I looked at what I was good at. I had the humility to say, I'm trying to improve my life. If you can help me, I will show up 150% and get the job done. And people started recommending me for interviews. And I went on an interview for a president of a hospital foundation position. And I had not ever worked in any other roles in there as an event planner or a major gifts officer or a CFO or a COO. But I had raised money as a volunteer that exceeded what that whole hospital had raised the year before, and they hired me. And I so did not know what I was going to do that I went right from that interview to the bookstore and bought Fundraising for Dummies, because I had to figure out, okay, now how am I going to structure this? But they weren't asking me to do surgery, so I figured I could figure it out. And that ability to be fearless, not reckless, okay? I say successful people have a couple of qualities. One is fearless, not reckless, and they're willing to ask questions or figure it out. Many times leaders are just too afraid to look like they don't know. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Show the humility and grow. And from there, I raised a lot of money there, and then I got recruited out to other hospitals, and, recruiters call me, and I'm profoundly grateful for that. I think there was a lot of art, a lot of science, and a lot of faith that came together to make all those things happen.
One of the things that's interesting you said is that you assessed your strengths. And I think that's really important. And I like when people think about their talent stack or their strength stack or the experience stack. And you said, well, I've raised money, as a volunteer before. Therefore, I have this skill stack. I have this interesting skill set, right? And then you applied it to, just having the basic, necessary ingredients to get to that first step and to move into that new role. And I think we don't do that enough to sit back and assess what are our strengths, what are our experiences, what makes us special and unique, right? Because we get to a certain point in age, we've done a lot of things in our lives and we've got some experiences and we have a unique talent stack that's different from everybody else. And I think that's really interesting. What you said is that you assessed your strength. What am I good at?
It's so important, John, because leaders sometimes doubt themselves. And when they doubt themselves, they've forgotten what about them is really important and unique. And we sort of think, oh, well, if I look at myself as I have this great strength, that'll be shining a light on me. So what? We need to be able to self-promote. That does not mean bravado. That does not mean that you're sickeningly overcompensating with how good you are. It's a knowing and a confidence in what you do. But confidence and self-esteem are different. You can be competent, but if you don't feel you belong, that self-esteem part is really important. I mean, I remember the first week on my job in that first CEO role, I had no idea how to create a budget. I had to walk down the hall to the marketing director and say, do you mind sharing with me what your budget is so that I could look at it? Because, then I went through it. Oh, yeah, printing, I'll need that. And, Because if you ask people to help you with the things you don't know, they will help you. If you pretend like you know everything, then you don't show up at your best.
Yes.
And and that's self-sabotage. So you have to have that humility to stand naked with your vulnerability and say, I don't know this part, but I really am wicked smart at this part.
Yes.
And in order to be good at this, I'll have to fill in. And it's the same with hiring, John. I always hire people that are really good at the things I'm not.
Yes.
And then I get out of their way.
Yes.
Because if I mirror myself and the people I hire, they're just yes people, I still don't have the person who's good at X strength that is not one of my strengths.
I love that. I know my first plant management experience, I was 32 years old, got my first manufacturing plant. And I remember being in that corner office thinking I had to have all the answers. And what my experience over that 3 years in that first manufacturing, leader role like that was that all the answers existed within my team. I just had to be smart enough to ask the questions and also shut up and listen and take that input in and be able to apply it to the decision making I was making. So I think I think there's something valuable in being able to ask questions and being willing to reach out and say, hey, I don't know this part really well. Help me out. You're the expert here. Show me the way.
You bring up a really good point, though, about asking questions.
Yeah.
Asking the right questions. I think that is a skill in and of itself. Are you somebody that you're in a meeting and everybody's going around and there could be posturing there? You've been in those meetings, the person who talks just to hear themselves talk, and you're going around the room and you're sitting there nervous about, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And adopting more of a thinking environment where you're not worried about what you're going to say. You're going to listen to what everybody else says and then construct what you're going to say. Best ask rather than saying something Socratically. You're going to ask the questions that nobody has asked before. And that really positions you as somebody who is taken in the 30,000-foot view instead of the 5-foot view. So I think it's really insightful that you would be able to get out of your team what you need by asking the right questions.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's part of it. I think we want to, like you said, it's an ego thing that we want to show that we have all the answers, but I think that's not helpful. Especially if we have experts around us that can help us, right? So we should rely on our teams. I think that's a great point. So where do you focus your attention as an executive coach?
I am very focused on helping leaders be their best, but also managing their well-being, because I think the two go in tandem. So I've been coaching for a long time, and people come to me because their team isn't responding, or they're not feeling valued at work, or they're not getting promoted, they're not feeling recognized. And as we're talking, inevitably, life is whole life, right? It's not segmented to, I just have this problem with this one person at work. Now we're starting to notice that, my relationship with my partner is strained. My children don't reach out to me anymore. And I'm not exercising. I've kind of let that go by the wayside. I'm binge eating in my office. There's candy in my drawer all the time. And we have to see the whole picture. So most of my clients know that. They come to me for that reason. And they're in executive level positions where they can't afford to allow themselves and their executive presence to be compromised, because then it looks like they can't do their job.
Right.
And the relationships that are falling apart at home are now starting to fall apart within their colleagues. They're not being perceived as very effective. People aren't trusting them. And we really work to diffuse what is the emotion here that we really need to process through so that we can create new thoughts to replace the assumptions that are playing in our head like a broken record.
Interesting. So, it's interesting because I think you're right. And I've had other guests on the show. We talked about this idea of being, not bringing your whole self to work, where you're not the same person at home as you are at work, and you have this you have the split personality, if you will, or you've got stress in one place and stress the other. And so you're not a whole person. And so you're constantly fighting this work-life balance concept, right? Where at work, I work hard, and then, at home, I'm relaxed. And the thing is, one of the things I've learned just in becoming an entrepreneur is now I don't really have to worry about that work-life balance. I'm living my life the same way at home as I am at work. This is just my life. It's not a work-life balance. It's just one life that I live. And I think that's something I've figured out the past 7 years. And when I do that, it's easier. I'm not even thinking about work-life balance. It's all one life I live. And I think that's the part I came to in the past 7 years, which was nice.
That's life integration.
Yeah.
That is where everything's integrated. So you're showing up at work the same way you're showing up at home, the way you're showing up if you go to the gym, the way you're showing up for your extended family, the way you're showing up for the interests that you're involved in your community. It isn't, I have to be this here, and then I come home and have to be this. And that really comes from a awareness of self, really knowing who you are and not having to put it on depending on the situation, not feeling like a chameleon that has to adapt. Now, I think adaptability and agility is really key in leadership, especially today. Being able to adapt to an environment is far different than you having to put on a different persona to work in this situation.
Right.
And, the way you're describing it is really a gift, and bravo to you.
Well, but it took me leaving corporate where I felt like I sort of had to be a certain way at work to comply with the world of corporate life, and I think when I realized that I had that problem. It's part of the reason I left corporate is I felt like I was being a different person at work than I was the way I was running my companies the way they wanted me to run it, not the way I wanted to run it. And I think that when I felt that, I was like, I got to do something different. This is not who I am, and I think that's...
You bring up a really good point, though, for people who are looking to move to a new company. You really need to go to the website and look up the company values, because you'll be able to see it very clearly if they value your independence, your authenticity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It'll be stated high in the list of values. Yeah. And then you can do things like go to Glassdoor or LinkedIn and look at, are they really living those values? Because you can make a mistake just in the organization you choose, not the role you choose. You want to choose an organization that aligns with what matters to you and prioritizes well-being and life integration.
Yes, I love that. So one of the things you do is you help people get off that treadmill to nowhere. I like that analogy. I think of like the gerbil on the wheel, not going anywhere. But you help people, advance in their careers, get off the treadmill. What keeps people from advancing, from getting stuck in that loop?
It's usually a blind spot that they don't see. So, and that is a behavior, right? But behind the behavior is an emotion that is making them really uncomfortable. And behind that is an assumption. And that assumption sounds something like this: I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not educated enough. But we really don't want to feel the discomfort of that. So we armor up and show up with this false persona that we can't maintain because it's not authentically who we are. So how that affects performance in the workplace is, I'm not a risk taker. I will not speak up at a meeting. I don't want to share my idea. And then you're sitting there saying, that idea that person just came up with, I thought that too, but wish I had said it. And so you become small. Worse yet, you teach people to see you as small. And that right there, 99% of people don't see themselves doing that. And so now the results that are showing up are I'm not getting promoted. I'm not getting hired. I'm not getting called back. And then the blame and complaint starts. This organization doesn't recognize me. I'm, a myriad of complaints. Right. And now you've externalized everything. It's all out there, and it's just distanced me farther from the emotion that is uncomfortable for me to process, stemming from that assumption of I'm not something enough. Mm. And you can't just, as a coach, I take very seriously. I can teach you the things that you need to know. You can also learn those in management school. You learn those in business school. You can read those in books. But my expertise is in let's get at what's in the way, because once we can get that out of the way, most people can find what is authentic to them and shine. Mm. But until you think of every bad boss you've ever had, there's something they're afraid of, right? Yeah. They're afraid of either being perceived as ineffective, judged for not being educated enough or experienced enough. And then we self-sabotage with these play small or overcompensate, overbearing behaviors that just kill our executive presence. So you have to dig down and be comfortable with what is underneath there. And how do we manage when that emotion gets triggered? Because that thing that has been present there for a long time, there are triggers that will trip that. And when you have a practice to ground yourself and say, oh yeah, that's me just being my chicken little self, or that's me just being my overbearing. Yeah, I do that sometimes. It's far cry different than saying, oh, why can't I stop doing that? Why can't I stop doing that? That's more discomfort, right? I'm being inept. But when you have a practice that, yeah, sometimes this happens, it's part of humanity and I know what to do with it. That's power.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This episode is brought to you by the Fraternity of Excellence. The Fraternity of Excellence is an online and real-world community for men who are looking to improve in all areas of their lives. The men of FOE are working together to become better husbands, fathers, and leaders at work and in their communities. They live by a simple philosophy: as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Now, I've been a member for more than 3 years, and for me, I finally found a brotherhood of men that I was missing from my time in the military. Now, I love being around guys who are dedicated to becoming a better version of themselves. So if you're interested in becoming a man of excellence as well, go to fraternityofexcellence.com, or you can reach out directly to me to learn more. This episode is brought to you by the Sasquatch Flag Company. The Sasquatch Flag Company is a family-owned business in New England that builds hand-carved American flags from seasoned white pine. Each flag is hand-built, and each star on the flag is hand-hammered and chiseled. No two flags are alike. They offer a variety of flag designs to honor the police, military, firefighters, dispatchers, and search and rescue personnel, to name a few. These stunning handmade flags look great in an office, a studio, the back porch, or above the fireplace mantle. They make the perfect gift for the veteran, first responder, or patriot in your life. Now, I love these flags, and I've been giving them as gifts for years, and I was a customer long before they became a sponsor of the show. I can't recommend them enough. So if you're looking for that perfect, uniquely American-made gift to give away, or if you want to treat yourself, go to SasquatchFlags.com and get your order in today. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Clevenger Fitness. As a high-performing leader, you know that leadership isn't about telling people what to do. It's about leading by example. And for most people, the one area that they're lacking when it comes to leading by example is their health and fitness. By improving your health and fitness, every other area of your life improves. But how do you get and stay fit as a busy leader? Well, you do what you've always done. You hire the best person for the job. Don't struggle on your own. Put Jeremy Clevenger on your team. Jeremy will work with you to take your physique, mindset, nutritional habits, and more to the next level with his step-by-step, all-inclusive coaching program. Now, I've worked with Jeremy for the past year, and I'm in the best shape of my life. If you want to step up your game, reach out to Jeremy at apexperformancesystems.com to find out more and get your initial consultation. Schedule with him today.
I love what you say, because I saw a lot of fear-based actions, I guess, from managers when I was in my 22 years in corporate. I saw a lot of fear, and it manifested itself in different strange behaviors from managers, but it was always fear-based. It was like the manager who never left his office and was always, whenever he had a meeting, he would bring people to his office. He would never get out of his office. But it was a fear, because it was a fear of, well, I don't want to, walk around and not really know what's happening in my company, or not really knowing the answers, or so I could tell. I mean, it was actually someone I worked for, but it was fear-based. He was just, if you wanted to, he never came to my operation. He was my manager, and he was in a different location. He never came in the 5 years I worked for him. He never came to the operation that I ran, except for like one time there was a VIP visit and he just showed up. But and anytime we had a meeting, he had to go to his office. He had to shut the door. It was always private, and it was just but it was definitely based on fear, like fear of not wanting to look stupid, or not having the answers or what have you. But fear plays a big role. And I noticed that with a lot of other managers, fear plays a big role in their behaviors. And I think what you're saying is that we've got to find where that fear is coming from, identify it, and actually be aware of it, so that when we see ourselves doing those behaviors that are not helpful to our career, that we recognize it and say, okay, I'm being a wuss here. I need to get out of my office and go talk to people. And guess what? Maybe I don't know the answers, and that's okay.
What you're saying is so important, because you're right. Behind every bad behavior is a fear. And usually it's stemming from our own ego.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's not a time to say, oh, there's that fear. I want to fight that fear. It's time to be gentle with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because our egos have kept us alive and still existing as a species, right? We're not extinct because we are very good at recognizing danger. Very good.
Yes.
Right? We know how to keep ourselves safe.
Yes.
But that safe behavior, especially at work, is not the person who advances in their career, because they're looking for calculated risk takers. They're looking for people who can strategically execute with vision, right? So you're not going to do that if you're fear-based. And our egos are really just trying to keep us safe. And when we understand that, then we cannot hate ourselves for feeling that fear, because once we can accept that fear is present and think about, where's that coming from? Oh, yeah, I do that. And I did this in this instance too. Deep breath. Yeah. And delineate the difference between what's a truth and what's an assumption. It's an assumption that these people aren't going to like my presentation. It's true that I'm really well prepared for it. So that's where you start to broaden the perspective between that sticky thought that keeps inserting itself in our head and really what the truth is in humanity. And the world gets a little broader and not so finitely into, I'm being persecuted here, I'm going to be threatened here, I might lose my job. And then you go down the rabbit hole. If I lose my job, my family won't respect me. I won't have any respect in the community. I might lose my house. And even though you don't think this on the surface, that's in the back of the mind, constantly playing small in your behavior.
Yeah. Yes. I see that a lot. So playing big, you mentioned executive presence. I think that's a great term. How would you define executive presence, and how do we appear bigger and not smaller in our roles in our organizations, to be able to be recognized for what our strengths are?
I think first we have to accept that we are born whole and big. We're just already there, right? We're already there. And then we take in these experiences from our lives, and they create filters over our genuine wholeness and goodness and braveness and courageousness and wonder, right? And so the person with executive presence has figured out how to take all those filters and put them down, knowing that they're still sometimes there and inching in once in a while, but they know what to do with them such that they can show up as not an emotional leader, show up as free thinking, show up as inquisitive, show up as not having it all figured out, but with certainty. Now, you can be certain that you don't know the answer, right? Certainty doesn't mean always being right. That need to be right has started every war, every conflict, every whatever that has ever existed in all of time. The need to be right is the ego saying you're not enough. Get out there, put yourself out there. You have to have power. Down. We have to say, I see you there, and I've got this. And that takes practice, mindful practices to give yourself room to step out in front of all of the smoke and mirrors of the filters that have been in front of you. So when you walk into a room with 15 people, you know somebody has executive presence by their body language, by the way they speak, by their humility, by their genuinely curious nature. They're there to take in the world and learn and grow. They're constantly on a trail of knowledge of how they can be better, how they can serve, how they can be servant leaders. Sometimes they have to be more difficult if they're dealing in a tough situation, but they're always doing it from a place of love. They're not there to hurt or yield power. I think power is an important thing to have when you're trying to get out of a difficult situation. So I don't say power is a bad thing, but when you use that as a need, I think you're going to self-sabotage around that. I think that we have to find our own empowerment by being more true to who we are, and again, working on those filters and knowing what to do when they're triggered.
It's interesting you say that because I think you're right. I think the people that we like to work with that might be an authority over us are people that feel real and genuine, that they are having real and genuine, reactions to issues. I think I've worked for some bosses that are sort of fake, and they're always pulling we've got to get to double the EBIT this year, and we're going to do whatever it takes. And you're like, okay, but that's not happening, right? Like, you see, it's like they're trying to fake. It's almost like they're trying to play a caricature of a boss versus being a real boss. And I think that when you are that way, you don't have the influence over others than if you are more genuine, saying, yes, I understand that, but here's some things that we can be doing to actually get close to that objective. And that's why I believe that it's still something we can do. And here's my thoughts on it. But just having that, being able to recognize, that you maybe have some doubters in the room, but instead of acknowledging their feelings and having a genuine reaction to those, but just to sort of overbear us, well, that's what we're going to do. That's the direction. And I think you're right. I think the people that are more authentic to their true selves and can have, like I said, have that ability to read the room, to be able to recognize the fears or recognize the concerns, and being genuinely like, look, like you said, out of love, I want to make this happen, and here's how we can do it. And what do you think? And, I remember I had a boss the one time that said, and it was interesting because at first I didn't like it, but he said to me, I presented a business plan to him as a new boss, and he said, "That's great, but what can you do to double your business?" And I remember being offended by that. Like, I've given you a good plan. It's a 10% growth over whatever. But he was genuine, like curious. It's like, but what could you do to double the business? Like if you had an unlimited budget, what were the things you'd do to double the size of the business? And it was a great exercise because it got me thinking differently, and he didn't have the answers, but he had a good question and he was willing to, out of curiosity, seek out some different answers and different thoughts.
Really good point.
I love that idea. Yeah.
Not knowing the answer. He didn't have the answer.
He didn't have the answer. Yeah. Which I love.
The right question.
Yeah, exactly. And be willing to be curious and just throw it out there. And just with a smile, you're like, what would you do to double the business? And I think that's what you're talking about, like executive presence. That's someone that's being big and thinking big. And I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. People are drawn to people with executive presence because there's a trust factor. There's an innate trust factor because those people trust themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So when you trust yourself, others will trust you. If you're putting on a cloak of I need this persona when I'm at work, or if you don't have a self-awareness and an acceptance of self, you're fighting yourself, and the phoniness is able to be seen, and introspectively, intuitively, they can feel it. Yeah. So you have to get all of that nonsense, that I call it head trash, out of the way. Even if you don't know what it is, you have to uncover that and sit with the discomfort long enough to realize this is just my imagination.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. We touched on it a little bit. We talked about it before we even started the show, but emotional intelligence, how does that play into it? Is there ways, because I think that now more and more, I think leaders with emotional intelligence are going to be essential for the workforce of the future. I saw a lot of leaders in my career had zero emotional intelligence. But where do you start? If you're coaching a client, you recognize, this guy or gal has got a problem with emotional intelligence. Where do you even start with that process to be able to help them sort of see how they are impacting others that they may not be able to see?
A really good question. You become a shepherd and you develop trust, and you start to help them discover what they don't realize about themselves. Like if you were to ask anybody on the street, what are your values? The average person doesn't know, right? So what do you value? What are the things that nobody can take away from you that are intrinsically part of your soul? First thing people will say is family, right? Okay, so yes, we value family. But do you value sense of humor? Do you value creative freedom, authenticity, structure, life integration? What are the things that are really important to you in the people that you like, right? So that'll help you determine your values. And from there, we go through lots of assessments, et cetera. Well, what are your strengths? And this stuff is not difficult to figure out. There are all kinds of links free on the internet where you can figure out a little bit about your strengths. Okay, now I'm starting to build a profile of myself. And sometimes it gets emotional for people because nobody's really asked them this much about themselves in the past. And they start to see all of these things that they haven't paid attention to while they've been listening to the ego tell them what they should doubt and what they should be afraid of.
Right.
Even though it's subliminal, it's still there. So now you've got your values. Now you have your strengths. Now you're starting to look at others and think about what they valued. You know how you noticed that one of your managers was fear-based? They're now able to see those things more in other people.
Oh, nice.
And then also able to understand more about themselves and how they're showing up. So it's usually a 3-step process. We have to build self-awareness, and then you build your ability to self-regulate, because nobody's perfect, and we're never going to get rid of those sticky thoughts that sometimes get in the way, but we certainly can regulate what happens when they show up. And then you're in a place of self-empowerment. And this is where you're instinctively aware of the thought when it shows up, the filter that you typically lay over that, and how you might have in the past showed up with whatever behavior. Now you've made a different choice. Now you have power. You know how to control those thoughts and how to accept and process through those emotions so that they can flow through you and you can leave them behind. So now you're noticing when you go to a meeting, oh, this person that's so angry that used to just grate on me like nails on a chalkboard, they're in pain. They're in pain. Makes me sad that they're in pain. That doesn't mean I have to internalize and personalize their attacks on me like there's something wrong with me. Yeah. There's really something there bothering them, right? So emotional intelligence helps you show up better and interpret situations not in a personal vendetta way, not in an attack, but more in a, now I can be my whole self as I was born to be, with all the wonder that I have in me and without all the filters.
I love that. I love that. I wish every leader could have that, because I think it's really important.
Well, it takes practice.
It does take practice. Absolutely. You have a podcast. It's called The Still Space. What do you do on your podcast?
So we talk about the exact scenarios that I'm talking about here. Right? You're on your job, something like this happens, or you're at home and somebody says something. What can we do? How can we respond more appropriately? How do we show up authentically? And it's the practice of finding first the still space, that pause moment where we can, I talk about the pause cafe, where we take a pause, P for pause, ask ourselves, what's going on here? Like, what am I feeling here that I really don't want to feel? U is understand the difference between what's an assumption, what's the truth. S is step back, allow for that pinhole view to open up a little more broadly. And E is, let's extend ourselves some compassion in this moment, not be hard on ourselves with, gee, I wish I could stop doing this. What's wrong with me? With, oh yeah, I do this sometimes. And when we can extend ourselves compassion, we can then extend it to others. So that practices around that is a lot of what we do in the podcast.
Oh, fantastic! That's great. It's another element of leadership that we don't. We talk about a little bit on this podcast when we have guests like you, but I think it's a really essential part of leadership, and it's to be able to leading yourself is a big part of how you're going to be effective when you're leading others, is to make sure you can lead yourself. And I think your podcast helps leaders lead themselves, it sounds like.
I have to tell you, John, it was a pivotal change for me in my life and in my leadership. I had a lot of persecution early on in my parenting years and throughout my divorce, which leaves you on guard all the time. Like, when is the next axe going to fall? And because I'm very driven and I'm very strategic and a great executor, those are my strengths. I have weaknesses too, but I could get into the C-suite. I could lead. But then I got there and I realized, maybe people don't like me so much. Yeah. Like, because this sort of command and control style of leadership, and I had a lot of expectations of people because I thought they were like me, driven and going to work hard, and and I had to manage different personalities, and it wasn't working. And that's when I started to study what is wrong here, what is not working, and I became certified and really high certifications and all kinds of things. But it really was a quest. It was really quite selfish on my part. I wanted to learn to be better for me. And in doing so, I became a much better leader, much more connected. Love came my way. I married again. My children and I are much closer back when I was more commanding control style leader. So I see realistically the benefit of knowing a different way. But we don't learn this in school. You have to seek this out yourself. And I think because it's so personal, that's why. It's not like I can pick up a book and figure out myself, right? And I consider it a privilege to work with people to do that because I know how it can change people's lives.
That's fantastic. So important. So it's essential for leadership and in life, really, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fantastic. Mary Lee, this has been fantastic. Great conversation. I really appreciate all that you've shared with us. How, if people are listening in and they're like, wow, I got to learn more. I want to connect with Mary Lee. I want to maybe have her help me get back on track. I'm stuck. I need some help. How can people find you and learn about your services that you provide?
Well, thank you for asking, John. Easily just go to my name, MaryLeeGannon.com. And actually right there on the top of the website is a really quick checklist to help you get valued, hired, promoted. It helps build your self-awareness. When you fill out this checklist, if you've checked 7 or more items on it, you'll be able to see perhaps the blind spot of how you may be getting in your own way. I'm also on LinkedIn. I post daily on LinkedIn and a lot of followers there. So that's probably the best ways.
Fantastic. We're going to go ahead and put links in the show notes for those resources in that checklist. Again, that'd be a quick and helpful way to see where you might have some issues that you have to work on. So go to Mary Lee's website. It's on the top of the website, and you just click on that. There's a quick checklist. You can go through it. You learn a lot about yourself through that process. And again, one of the things we like to do on the show is give you resources to help you become a better leader. This is a clear resource, free, that you can go to, and you can learn a lot about yourself through that process. Mary Lee, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your journey, sharing your experiences, and giving us a lot to think about in terms of leading ourselves and being the best leader we can be. So thank you.
It's an honor to be with you, John. Thank you for asking me.
Thanks again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey, what's happening out there, everybody? This is Lawrence Ross, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about my podcast, The Lawrence Ross Show.
Egomaniac.
It's a 2-hour weekly exploration into my mind. I also do sketches, celebrity impersonations.
You're out of order!
And I also do song parodies. Not too shabby for a blind guy.
Not only are you visually impaired, but you are geographically impaired.
New episodes are released every Friday. Check it out on your favorite podcasting platform or listen to it here on Society 13 on Electrocast.
Hey, it's Tim from 50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys, the comedy podcast you had no idea you needed. Join Ben, Jeff, and me as we continue our musical road trip back through the years and around the globe. See, just when you thought all white guys were like Joe Rogan, you come across 3 educators trying to remember when we were cool.
50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys.
Electrocast.